Thanks everybody for jumping on. We really appreciate your time. Um, I know there's a lot of different things that each of us are kind of worried about and working on. We will definitely dig into some of the fallout that's happened regarding the building code rules. But first off, wanted to take a moment for us to do introductions. We'll do inside the room first of everyone that's here. I'll start. I'm Lance Sayers. I'm from the Association of Idaho Cities. I'm their policy analyst.
Jerry Peterson, Home Energy Services.
Daniel Mosikevich, I'm AIC's member service and grant specialist.
And Jerica, you're the first person on our screen. Congrats. Would you like to start for us?
Sure, Jerica Stacy. I am the Director of Technical Training at the International Code Council, and I live in Ammon, Idaho.
Thank you, Jerica. Brian, you're next.
Brian Dumont, Government Relations for the International Code Council. And I'm sorry I have to leave early, but I wanted to come on and as long as I could.
Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. Elizabeth, I don't know if I know you super well. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better, though. I think you're still on mute. Oh, mic's not working. We'll come back to you. Taryn, we'll go to you next.
Taryn Mitchell, architect in Meridian, Idaho, and member of the AIA Idaho Advocacy Committee and Small Firms Exchange State Rep.
Okay. Thanks, Taryn, for being on. We appreciate your time. We'll go to our favorite friend in our padded room, Greg.
Yeah, I'm the crazy engineer from Avista.
Thanks for being on, Greg. We appreciate it. Tess?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tess Studley. I work at the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, Program Manager of Energy Code Trainings.
Thanks, Tess. David?
Dave Freelove, Idaho Energy Code Circuit Rider.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see you. Ted?
Yeah, Ted Lancey, building official, City of Coeur d'Alene.
Thanks for being on, Ted. How's the weather up at Coeur d'Alene right now?
You know, it's sunny and our snow is melting.
Oh.
It's the latest update.
Okay. Well, hopefully you guys don't have too much snow meltage. Jason?
Hello, Jason Blaze, City of Boise building official.
Thanks for being on, Jason. Chad?
Ed Blanco, AIA Idaho. I'm co-chair with Taryn, so thank you for all of your guys' efforts.
Thanks for being here, Chad. We appreciate your time. Brett?
Yeah, this is Brett Stoddard. I'm with the City of Rexburg, building official.
Good to see you, Brett. And Kevin?
Hi there, everyone. Kevin Rose. I work with Tess on the Codes and Standards team at NIA.
Thanks, Kevin. Elizabeth, it looks like there's two of you now. Did you hook up to another device so that you could use audio?
I think I am good now. Can you guys hear me?
Can.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm Elizabeth Torsky. I'm a building code specialist with Cascade Natural Gas, which is a sister company to Intermountain Gas.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on today. We appreciate your time and appreciate everyone coming in to kind of do a debrief of what has been going on lately. We did have some highlights for notes. David, I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything from a training standpoint. You provided an update about Moscow, but if you wanted to talk about any other trainings real quick.
Oh yeah, currently right now, I did get yesterday, finally got a date and topics and location confirmed for Moscow. So I'll have attendees from Moscow, Latah County, and Lewiston will be up at that training. I had a training scheduled for Tuesday on late Friday afternoon. They canceled on me at Mountain Home in Elmore County. Apparently they had some guys that were out and it wasn't going to work for them. So we're still jumping back and forth right now, trying to coordinate everybody to reschedule that one and get that one set. As soon as I have that done, I'll get that flyer out and let everybody know to get that updated so it's on the website. I may or may not. I'm waiting to hear back. I had another HVAC contractor from Coeur d'Alene asked me if I'd come up. He has 10 employees he wants to get air balance certification done on. So I threw out next Tuesday or Wednesday to do that, but I have not heard back from him on if he wants to do that or not. At the same time, I'll try to do some stop-ins on the way up there and the way back just to touch bases with some of the jurisdictions I'll be going through. And then from there, I'll be also reaching out up there in North Idaho with Ted and Justin Miller and getting some stuff scheduled up there in North Idaho, and then just getting another round going. Jerry, he'll be finishing up his training in here in April. I believe he said it was April 21st. He'll be done with doing his union school or what he does there. And then from there, we'll be hitting it hot and heavy with the local jurisdictions here, hitting Nampa, Caldwell, Boise, really kind of getting it done around here. And other than that, that's what I've got on the horizon right now.
Anybody have any questions for David about his trainings? Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
That means I'm doing good.
Well, thanks, David, for providing us that update on that information. And yeah, I shared the latest flyer with Daniel. We put that up on the website, just so everyone knows. We are putting it on the coach training website and the IdahoEnergyCode.com website, so you can look at trainings in both spots. The other thing was, Jerica, you had a stakeholder survey that you were talking about via email with me. Is there anything you wanted to chat with the group about that?
No, I think you did a great job just in that email. We're working with the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project and New Buildings Institute on some stretch codes in the Intermountain region. And so some of you, Jason, you've probably been tasked or talked to by them in the past. But they're just trying to gather some information on what might be helpful and some of the barriers to stretch codes and that sort of thing. So they created a specific link for the Boise area so that it can include some of the IGCC considerations. But if any of you have like 5 minutes or so to fill that out, I think they'd really appreciate it. Thanks, Lance.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll keep that on the email that we send out routinely to our members, just so that way they can keep it top of mind. I don't know if I saw this, Jerica. Is there a deadline, like, when the last submission will be taken on that? Is that something that'd be helpful to share with people?
I don't recall. It should be at least a couple weeks. So I'll ask and let you know.
Okay. Brian, did you have something you were going to say on that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I just saw your camera come on, so I just wanted to make sure I wasn't ignoring you.
No.
One other note while I'm thinking about it, in case if anyone asks, I apologize about the email this week for that I've sent out. MailChimp turned on a new feature where if you didn't open the email, it resends it to you a couple days later. And I did not catch that when it happened. So I got at least a couple emails from people saying, wait a minute, I thought the building code rules were there was already a hearing for it. That's true. It's already done. MailChimp just decided to send out a duplicate email to people that did not open the first one. So I will make sure that doesn't happen in the future so we don't get confusion on dates or if something's actually happened. So that's my bad. I just haven't sent another email because I didn't want to blow up people's inboxes, and figured that we'll send out another one next week to kind of debrief about everything. And then kind of the main crux of what we felt like when talking with Tess and Jerry wanted to go over is, as all of you are aware, there was a hearing in House Business this past Tuesday for the pending building code rules. That definitely did not go the way we had hoped it would. The rules were rejected by the committee, meaning that they are done. Like there's nothing we can do with those rules in this legislative session. If there's other options, but none of those sound realistic, that Representative Crane would like to look at with putting it into statute. But I think that most likely we're looking at a reset. Jerry, I don't know what notes you wanted to share from that meeting, but anything that you wanted to discuss from the hearing that was on Tuesday?
I'm more curious. I was there. I guess I have my own opinion about what happened and where we're going, but it would be really helpful to hear from some of the people that are attending today. We're not really asking for a grand plan, but just kind of briefly what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I would speak up to that, Jerry. I think where we're headed is we've got some interesting challenges ahead of us, right? We have the International Fire Code that we were looking at trying to hopefully get next session, which we obviously were hoping that we would go that route if we got the IBC and IRC. We obviously did not get that. So where does this go with next session? I would say that if I was going to put my 2 cents in, I think next session we need to probably look at doing all three of those in conjunction with the fire marshal's office and maybe go about it that way. I don't know otherwise. I think to be honest with you, I think there was some things that were done behind closed doors that this was anticipated and predetermined before we went in the meeting. If I'm being honest with you, I don't feel like this was something that was just sprung upon us in the meeting. I think this was all pretty well calculated. So I don't know. Other than that, I would say we've got, I don't know if I would like to try to do all three. I think we should go next time with the IFC, the IRC, the IBC. I think we ought to keep it in rule and kind of fight for that, if you will. Because I just hate having stuff in statute. But I also think that we need to be, I know there's legislators that were saying that they didn't know about some of the requirements or the fire things and whatever there was a bunch of stuff mentioned about that. Obviously, none of which of that was true, but I think we need to do a better job of letting all of those legislators know locally, even if it's not just a statewide thing. I think we need to do that locally, and we need to let them know about these collaborative rulemaking meetings. I'm not saying that Doppel didn't do a good job, because I feel like Doppel did a great job of the negotiated rulemaking, but I think that at this point going forward, we probably need to be a little bit more in their face, if you will, with the legislators, of letting them know what's going on and letting them be invited to these meetings. Because I feel like across the state, I mean, there was like 18 meetings or something like that. I can't remember the number, six locations and 3 different times at each or something like that. That you're not going to get the word out any better than that. But I think it will at least take away that piece of the pie. I also think that we ought to maybe, I don't know, I may even attend in person next time. I was supposed to testify, and the virtual side of my computer doesn't like it when they flip back and forth from panelist to viewer. So I was fighting that. But I really wish that we would have been able to answer some of the questions in person there. And I think if nothing else, we need to even have maybe a little bit more. And I don't want to take away anybody that was in the meeting, take away from what they did or said. But I do think that there were some easy questions that could have been answered that weren't. And I think we need to hit that, because they had questions and we weren't able to answer them educationally or technically, however you want to say that. I think we need to hit that, because that's a big piece that they can just run over us if we don't get ahead of that. So a little bit more technical expertise in the room, I think we need a little bit more of. But there again, I'm not bashing anybody. I think there was a great effort put into this. I just think we now know what our direction is going forward, because at that point, we're going to be still trying to get the 24 in 2027. So it's crazy. Anyways, that's all. I'll stop talking.
So if I can respond to the question part of it. I was there in person and I made the conscious decision to not sign up to testify, kind of based on, what I was hearing, what was going around. In hindsight, it's always to say, well, I should have done this and I should have done that. And I don't know that doing that today is productive. Again, we're not trying to find fault with, all of the people that worked on this. I would like to address a couple of specifics. One, if they're not wanting to go in a direction, the quantity and quality of the questions really don't matter. It's just that path that they took. Even if we answered every one of those questions, would that have changed the outcome? Beyond the questions that we couldn't answer, as in, codes referencing one another. They're some of the simple questions. And again, I don't want to point fingers at people. The people that were asking those specific questions, they already know the answers. They're just picking something, out of the verbiage. And it's the greatest distraction in the world. And that's why we go to considerable effort when we're writing amendments and stuff to keep the word count to a minimum. The couple of the specifics, if I had signed up to testify in an attempt to answer a couple of those questions, they would have burned up all my time answering questions they already knew the answers to. And that's just part of the game that we play up there. And so, the other big question is, the statute versus rule. And when they're talking about statute versus rule, they're also talking about, making it an Idaho code, which we already reference and call it that. But as far as publishing our own code book, there's several problems there. One, the cost. They're not going to do it for free. We have to pay for that. And the question is, since the contractors are basically footing the bill for the permits, the majority of the funding going into those respective boards come from permit fees. Are they okay with it? Are the people that are funding this, are they okay with it? And then probably the biggest question is, everybody on this meeting has been here and spent a lot of time on it. We've been working on this for over 2 years. And then we get shot down in the last minute. What's the motivation or incentive for, changing a whole nother process and going through it? Who is going to invest that amount of time into trying to switch it over to a state, in statute, not knowing whether or not that would happen. So it's kind of it's more of a distraction than a plan. It's like, we'd like to move in this direction, but nobody's providing dates. Nobody's providing a sense of urgency or even a sound reasoning for doing it. It's just I want this. And it's like, why? What is it going to change? On what level? We're pretty good at doing what we already have. And we get better at it as we go. What is that perceived change? And is it just, are we sidelining our industry expertise, just for the sake of control? And so, these are significant questions that need to be answered before we run down that path. Who is going to be the industry experts? Who are going to be the stakeholders if that process moves forward? What does that look like? Who's going to be involved? Who gets to make the decisions? And so there's quite a bit more there than just expressing a desire to go into it. I think the Representative Burge had the best statement of the day, and it was very common sense and very logical. And it's like, why don't we just do this while we're in the process of doing something else? And instead we chose to do nothing. I don't think that was a good option, but that is kind of where we ended up. So I think we've got a little bit of a sorting process to go through. And this is something we obviously want feedback and support with, but instead of trying to point fingers, I think the legitimate questions, we should provide answers for those, but we need to explore what the options look like and put those out there. I don't know whether putting all of the codes under one rule package, I don't know if that was the right way to do it. It would be the quickest and easiest way to do it, but I don't know, if that was, in hindsight, the approach. And so there's quite a bit of there's a few things that we need to look at, and then I'll stop. I'd like to hear from some other people, if possible.
Greg, I know you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I'll just offer up some observations from watching it. So I think Brett had mentioned it correctly. It was already decided before the hearing even started. So a couple observations. You mentioned Rep Birch had offered up a substitute motion to hold in committee to fix issues. That was shot down. Also, Rep Harris made the inquiry on whether they'd be willing to strike item number 9, which was the biggest contention that I heard was the fire alarm and sprinkler stuff. And when Justin noted that, yeah, he was totally open to striking that, that didn't change the vote. So, I mean, just taking those pieces of data points, I mean, I don't think there's anything that would have changed the outcome. And I wouldn't question the process. I think you guys did a great process and did all the hard work. I mean, everyone along the whole way. And so, I mean, when you had nobody testified against it and everyone was supportive of it, and you had that just kind of shows that there's something else behind the scene that we don't know what's going on. And really, the only way to address that is just to meet with the reps and find out what was wrong. I mean, find out what their concerns were. And I mean, that's really the only path I see. I mean, you could double the time frame, or double the number of meetings, or this or that, and it won't change the outcome. You just have to meet with the reps to find out what their concerns were and see how you can address those.
This Todd Greenwell. I don't have that icon to hold my hand up, but I just want to mention I do agree with Greg. I think they came in with the agenda in their pocket. It goes back to something that Andrew Bix said in one of the board meetings about 6 months ago. Then there was something where they were given an edict, not to do any advancing codes. And that shocked me then. And I'm just wondering if there's undercurrent, to Greg's point, that there's just something going on. We don't know the audience. Just to Greg's point, I think we got to get to know these people individually, find out what is the undercurrent, because obviously there is one to me anyway. And it's not about the content. And when somebody starts arguing about gluing registers to the carpet or the fact they weren't invited to the fire code meetings, and the motion to reject the codes, and when that was challenged, there was no answer provided. The answer was referenced with another person that said something about the fire code. So it was comical in some ways, but I think we got to find out what's going on deeper. I don't know if that's through our legislative people here that deal with that area or not, but it just almost embarrassing to me, the whole thing. But I think we just don't know the audience, or they're not allowing us to know the audience, the representatives. I haven't listened to the first hour. I had to jump off, but I'll do whatever I can here with the government regulatory people here. if we want more information. Thanks.
Brett?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I just think that we obviously, to what's already been said regarding, reaching out to our local representatives and things like that. The one thing that I would ask is there a path forward at a different angle which obviously would include a different group? Say, for example, instead of taking it in front of the House, we take it in front of the Senate. I know there's challenges with that. I know there's directives why we always go through the House, but is there any pathway through the Senate? Because I'll just be honest with you, it's a different group in the House than it is in the Senate. There's differences there. Pros and cons, obviously. It's not all one easy path. Is there a different path going that route rather than going through the House? Because we know it's going to land to the Business Committee of the House.
You want to address how you want me to?
You can go ahead.
So there was a change, if I get this wrong, Lance, correct me. There was a recent change to rules, how they moved through the legislature. When I worked for the Division of Building Safety, we only had to have it approved by one side or the other. And so if it ended up going through the Senate and we passed the Senate, then it would by pretty much automatically clear the House. That changed a couple, 3 years ago to where both sides now have to approve. So this was put in front of the Senate last Thursday. Thursday
it was
before.
two Thursdays ago.
2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, it was presented to the Senate. We had no opposition. There was nobody testifying against it. There were a couple of questions which we answered, and it was approved unanimously by the Senate to move it to the floor. And typically that's optimistic. If we get one side, then usually we have a pretty good shot at the other side. And so, once one side turns it down, then there's no way to reintroduce it or bring it back up. If it was something super pressing and we had a lot of high level support for it, we might be able to do something through resolution, but not something as broad based as the package we put in front of them.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I do need to step out, but I just wanted to say that we have already started having conversations about what some publishing options might be, but I agree that I don't think that's the central concern right now.
And Bobby, if I could address your comment real quick. This is not the first time and Dave, if you want to follow up with Bobby on this, feel free. We had a situation when we were trying to get the 2018 approved where we had a couple of legislators come to a building code board meeting and basically tell them that it was dead in the water, that they didn't even need to waste any more time on it. Remember that these boards are basically structured and authorized through legislation. They're very distinctive verbiage in there and what their charges are, how they're supposed to operate, the public meetings. I mean, these are very involved, and Doppel did an excellent job of presenting this year. We have never had that level of support, through Doppel or DBS. The number of meetings that we held, they put more effort into this than we ever have previously. And your question, Bobby, I didn't mean to run out of rabbit hole there. The question is, why do we have a board if they don't listen to us? That's the elephant in the room. We're the stakeholders. We represent the industry. We are the people that need these codes to do what we do. This is our job. This is our livelihood, and we know what we're talking about. And to have someone come up and say, Yeah, well, I don't like it, so it ain't gonna happen. It's frustrating, but at the same time, it's the reality of the geopolitics of this great state. Um, is there a way around it? Persistence, I think. We shouldn't be ashamed of where we're at. We're actually done really well. I mean, this would have been nice to have this, but we're not lagging in this area. We're doing good as a state. And most of it is because we just don't give up on it. And it's like, okay, they said we have these concerns. All right, we'll address those concerns. Now, how do you want it? If we address these concerns, are you going to be okay with it? Or do you have some other concerns? As far as notifying everybody, I don't know. I mean, you almost have to deliberately not want to be engaged. The Code Collaborative has been around for decades. These boards have been around for decades. If you're part of this industry and you're not paying attention to the people that are making your rules, that's kind of on you. But they knew about this because we've been talking about it, like I said, for 2 years. They knew where we were at in the process. And so if they choose not to be involved, it's not an excuse. And we have no obligation, nor does Doppel, to identify every person that's involved in these industries. It's not feasible. It comes back to, I hate to use a more generic term, but ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so if you have people making decisions that affect your industry and you choose not to be engaged, that's kind of on that individual. It's not something that we should have to deal with in policy.
Jerry, this is Todd again with Idaho Power. Have you heard those kind of excuses / tactics used previously through the decades? Because that's I agree with you on that, because we've had such good testimonial, and I think the quality of what we've produced in this group is pretty tough to challenge, and that's why I was thinking maybe these reasons were coming out of the hip pockets that some kind of a wrench. You couldn't do it on a technical nature because we're in a tremendously good position. You know what I mean?
So,
that's what I say was embarrassing. Like, what are you folks saying? I mean, this doesn't make sense.
thanks, Todd. When we finally approved the 2018, I remember distinctively the chairman saying, I can't believe there's nobody here to testify against it because this has never happened before. And he said, is there anybody here that has anything to say? And there was nobody there. And it passed. And when we can get the building contractors to get up there and say, we overwhelmingly support this, what's left? Who was out there? And so for one person to say, well, we weren't notified, it's like, well, the rest of the world was, and they participated. And how fair would it be if they were in that same situation and they, and I said, and I stood up there and I said, well, I'm here to testify because I wasn't notified that you guys were doing all this stuff. We have a term for it. It's called an outlier. It happens. There's no way to avoid it. But how much credibility do we give that individual when we've addressed every group and organization and every email that I've ever sent out regarding that? It's like, please forward this to anybody that may be interested, whether it's training or rules or part of a discussion. And so I have to go back to my opening comment, which is, if you don't want something to succeed and you're trying to block it, you just grab every excuse you can find. And it doesn't make any of them legitimate. It's just another excuse. And when you throw enough of those into a time restraint, then you get what we got. And so, I think it's a tactic more than an excuse. What's disappointing is that one or two people can do that in a large committee like that, and nobody else felt like saying, well, I knew about it. And I'm not even in that industry. I mean, unfortunately, protocol says you don't do that to each other, but that's, that would be like the response that you'd like to give, but it'd probably get gavelled again. Oh.
Well, thanks for that explanation, Jerry. I'm going forward. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how we get our boat in the underlying currents. I mean, to go through this year and a half and to replicate this again, hoping a door might be open without again being in behind the curtain. Is this a reasonable thing to desire to understand in advance of how folks feel about a year and a half of what we produced? Or is this really out of our control and it's just roll the dice if we might or might not? Because I look at myself and do I want to invest another year and a half at a slot machine?
Yeah, I understand, Todd, that what it said about persistence is really critical because we can't fix anything today, but if we take all of the notes and all the comments and we address every single issue that they brought up, which we need to do, but not tomorrow, what is the next issues going to be? And that is the kind of the pathway going forward. And you say, okay, well, we, in consideration of the comments that were brought up, we've done this, this, and this, and this. Are you okay with it now? And unfortunately, they may not present us the opportunity to ask that question. And so if they're unwilling to come to the meetings and they're unwilling to communicate with us individually, then yeah, we could be spinning the wheels. I guess the bigger question, and I tried to get this resolved early on, was there some kind of directive from above that said, we don't want to address this at this time, to try to deliberately not have us spend a bunch of time and effort on something if we knew it was being directed from leadership that they didn't want to go in this direction. That would have been a very simple question and a very simple response. And that's what we put in front of Andrew, and the visits to the governor's office was, hey, if you guys need to tap the brakes or you want to tap the brakes, just tell us so that we don't run too far down the road, and we never got that signal back.
I agree. This is Todd again. Yes, I agree. That's probably the statement I was referring to when I was sitting in one of the board meetings 6-7 months ago, and the chairman had talked about, I think he used the term tap the brakes, looked left and right, nobody said a word, and we proceeded forward, ignored the point, and never heard back. I mean, that seems fundamentally there was something there that we needed to be aware of next go around, or something to understand. It's not this content again. I firmly believe it's not the content we produced. It's an excellent piece of work.
Brett?
Yeah, I've wondered, what is our path forward? Because, to what's already been said, I really don't want to just dwell on the past. I want to move forward. What does it look like going forward? I don't know if maybe there is some pathway, because on the IBC side of it, you can go more restrictive. The IRC you can't, if I understand the statute correctly. And what does that look like on a local jurisdiction level? Does that mean that local jurisdictions are going to start adopting the 2024 IBC?
Yeah.
And does that mean that they're going to, I know you can't go more restrictive than the 18 IRC, but by adopting the 24 IRC locally, is that being more restrictive? I mean, I know that we'll get pushback on all that, but certainly it's easier to convince local than it is state. And I don't know if there's maybe a path forward on that. I just think that on a state level, we all know that it's one legislator. I won't mention their name, but it is one legislator that's pushing this, and they're doing backdoor negotiating or deals or whatever the case it may be. And that's what's causing this holdup. I don't know that you're going to get around that. I don't think we're going to get around that because, to what's already been said, it wasn't really the content, it wasn't the lack of collaboration, it wasn't any of that. But I think going forward, I don't know that we're going to get around that because you still have that one individual that is making the most waves, and that individual holds a lot of power down there. And I wonder about taking this more on a local level and just step back and say, you know what, state's not going to get it done. What are we going to do locally? I know it creates an inconsistency and nobody likes that, but at the end of the day, I don't think, I mean, you got new technologies coming out, you've got things that are changing in the construction world, whether we like it or not, and it's going to make it very difficult to start enforcing a code in a gray area because the gray area opens up wide and interpretation flows in freely. And now all of a sudden you've got probably more inconsistencies than you do, by adopting it. I don't know. That's just some thoughts.
So you're prohibited from mandating anything beyond the state adopted minimums. And so you can't, other than a few examples, and Jason, you can weigh in on this if you would, please, but you could not adopt through ordinance the 2024 version by law. It doesn't mean that you can't have people designed to that. We just can't mandate it and then enforce it. So if they willingly want to do it, we could inspect that level, but I don't think you could mandate it. As far as individuals blocking things, we've been able to move stuff through. We've had those same people in place for a long time, so it's not an impossibility. And I would hate to, say that it can't be done. Do we need to take a different pathway? Perhaps, but I wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of letting them think that, they all by themselves are going to be, directing an entire industry. I think more appropriately, the industry itself, and the engaged and involved stakeholders probably need to speak up. But we need to provide the methodology and the information and how to do that productively, because we can, obviously everyone in the room here has a legislator, and so this can be more grassroots. You really don't know how hard the hill's going to be until you start climbing it. We thought we had a pretty good run at it. With that behind us now, we just need to bring more people, more pressure, more resources into bear, and just say, okay, well, let's go in a different direction so that we don't have this singular approach that can be, undone by a small one or more, individuals.
And I agree with that, Jerry. I guess my point or my question is I believe, and I could be wrong, I'd have to read the statute again. It's been a little bit since I read this specific language, but I was under the impression you couldn't adopt anything more restrictive, not necessarily or specifically a new code. I know it says you got to go off the 2018 code, but I guess it's in the eye of the beholder, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out. Is it in the eye of the beholder of what's more restrictive or what's not? Or I know it says it shall be known that this 2018 code, but why couldn't we adopt the appendices out of the IRC that shows ADUs or something like that that actually gives you more latitude, not less? Maybe I'm missing it.
We've done it in the past, and we're probably the reason why there is more language and they're restricting it. We're always pushing the envelope on something, right? But you can do the appendices, no problem there. I think you just have to have the public hearing and notify all those organizations. So you could potentially do the appendices. I just don't think you can do the actual code year because we've done that in the past with energy code, and I think they just I'd have to go read it again, but maybe there's a loophole. But I think that's why they added the language is they wanted to say you can only adopt these codes and then you're limited on certain amendments you can make in the certain codes. But there's definitely more latitude on amendments for the IBC for sure. But everybody is correct in everything that's been said in this meeting. And it's to me, it's going to take Doppel meeting with this individual legislator, maybe one or two of them, but it's really going to be the only people they listen to, in my experience, is the builders. If the builders and AGC don't put pressure on them, I don't know if we're going to get anywhere without that. So we got to bring those guys to the table in these future meetings.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think maybe what needs to happen, because I know Doppel and they have to be, but they're careful about how they lobby and or not lobby, I guess, is probably a better term. But you're exactly right, Jason. I think there's going to have to be a meeting potentially this summer or something to where and like that's already been said, I was shocked when the home builders, we knew they were in support of it, but we didn't know they'd be that vocal in front of the legislators in favor of it. That was quite surprising, to me at least. And I think it was a definite good thing in the progress of adopting the new code. But I do think that we're going to have to meet with them, that individual specifically. And obviously, I don't know if they'll commit to anything, but if they do, that might be a path forward. And maybe there's some things that they have hangups that they've never mentioned before. I don't know, who knows? But at the end of the day, I think by meeting with them locally, I mean, I think every building official in Idaho should be meeting with and knowing their representatives, whether they agree on all issues or not. They should be meeting with them and talking with them locally, not just at the state house at the last 11th hour, right? I mean, I don't know. We do that here. We have great success with it. We have great support from them. They actually started understanding that we're actually human, not a bunch of whatever they label us as. And it works out very well. So
There's definitely truth to that, but the unfortunate part is our key stuff goes through these two committees. So it's those people on those two committees that we have to convince.
I agree. I agree.
Brett, if I'm not cutting you off, I did have a couple of thoughts that I did want to offer from the hearing on Tuesday. I do appreciate what everyone's saying and appreciate the input. I think first and foremost, Brett, something I wanted to share, Jason, with Idaho, I think that would be good for next time. I don't know why I didn't think about it until we got the hearing, but I do think we had an opportunity missed by not asking Fire Marshal Knut to be in there to talk about the heat detectors in the garage. I don't know if it would have made a difference. I'm not saying it would have, but I think not having him there to talk about the reason for why it was added into the proposed rules, I think put Justin Touchstone in a really awkward spot, which was unfortunate because I think there was a lot of strong arguments for it, but Justin didn't want to sound like he was, my interpretation, he didn't want to sound like he was power hungry and stealing power from the fire marshal. And the sympathies, I'd say, for most people in the state is first and foremost for first responders. And so I think that's one thing that would be helpful next time, is to make sure to talk to him about that. And that's something that I should have thought about sooner. So definitely take ownership on that part. The other thing I was thinking too, as we were going through this committee hearing was trying to be careful about how I say this. I think there was testimony or at least responses to questions that were not helpful by a couple people that testified. And again, it's nothing against those people, but whether they're on the board or whether they're interested in this getting passed, if they cannot stand behind the rules that are proposed and they offer a very lukewarm reception for it, then please just stay home. We don't need your lukewarm support. We need your full-fledged support. Because I think that gave more leeway for the business committee to vote alongside with the person that has the initial complaints about the rules. But I do think it's important to, I think a couple items after this meeting, and we could talk about how we want to encourage people to do this, but I think it's really important for us to reach out to Ken Burgess and express our gratitude for how willing he was to go up there and be transparent about the work that was put in. There was not one part of Ken's comments that I recall him saying that were negative towards Doppel or towards the Code Collaborative or anybody. And I think he deserves huge kudos for being willing to do that, especially because I think that Ken saw just as much as we did that it was going down, but he still gave it his best effort, both outside talking to legislators and in that committee. The other part I did want to mention too, just because Todd, you brought it up, please, no one on the call take this as offense, but the only people I know that worked on this, as far as, that are registered lobbyists in some way, was Ken, myself, and Haley. I did not see anyone else participate in the process. And so if you do have anybody that you can talk to that works in lobbying, it's just a question of how much do we really want this? How much do you really want it? How much effort are you going to put in to make this happen? Because if it's not known that the association you're with or group you're with or the people that you know, if they're not a part of it, or at least not vocalizing that, it's a lot harder to get something across the finish line. I think if we had more broad support, not even just builders, but just more associations and groups in general, it would be that much higher of a hill to climb to get this across. And again, that's not a shot across the bow. I'm not saying that in a complaint way. It's just, these are the things I observed through this process of trying to get it on the House side. But Brett, you had a comment you wanted to make.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment to your earlier comment regarding the having Canute in there and State Fire Marshal's office. That's kind of what I was alluding to at the beginning of this meeting when I said that we probably want to go about, if we go about this the next legislative cycle or session, that we want to include the IFC. And I think we do want to have Canute in those meetings. We do want to have some fire backing on this, because ironically enough, one of the individuals that I've referenced in this meeting at this time actually has interest in the fire community. And I think if there is support on the fire marshal side of it, then you probably would at least have maybe an open mind, I don't know, or maybe a more open mind to taking the IFC. And if we're going to take the IFC, obviously the IBC and the IRC would just naturally follow or lead, whichever that is. So I think that we definitely want to have Canute's office in on this. And I think the more, and I don't know, some of the legislators maybe don't agree with what I'm about to say, but the more state entities you have that have broader representation is probably only going to hold more water, not less. Especially the fire community. It's a very powerful community regarding fire safety and some of the things that go along with that. And that stuff could maybe help get the IBC across the finish line. I don't know what it would do to the IRC, but you do have heat detectors and things that are in that same conversation. So maybe so. But either way, I agree with all of what you just said regarding the building contract associations and everybody else. But I do think we need to have the state fire marshal's office in that meeting with us when we meet with these representatives to try to understand, what is it that we don't like, or what is it that we need to change, or what is it that we can do as a tactical approach to move this thing on through.
I don't want to derail anybody's discussion. Just a reminder that we're the Energy Code Collaborative.
I mean, I think that's fair. The hard part is those we have to navigate the fact that if we're going to get the energy code through, I think we do have to try our best to be. We have to coordinate together, and I think that's what Brett's getting at. I agree with what you're saying, Brett. We have to work together. If we want to get these through, it's going to take a group effort.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because honestly, if I'm being completely blunt, you will not get the energy code across the line if you don't get the IBC across the line. It's just not even there's not even a path forward in my opinion. So that's why I was kind of hanging my hat on the IBC and the IRC, and I included the IFC just because I think really if you don't get, I mean, there's no reason to have the energy code across the finish line if you don't have the IBC or vice versa. I think they kind of just go together. And I think if you're going to get the IBC, then you're going to have the discussion about the IFC. So I don't know. I agree with you, Jerry. I agree that this is the energy code side of it, but I think they're so intertwined that I don't know how we can separate one from another very easily.
Yeah, what I was trying to, I guess I should provide a little more specific. We had the amendment in there towards the air sealing, which the builder supported uniformly. And so one of the options early on would have been to, just amend the existing and insert that new language in there. And so, again, we have options. We agreed as a group to run the package, but we did have, so if the package is not deliverable, that doesn't mean that we are prohibited from amending specifics. And so, I'd like to hopefully bring this group back together in May and have those options in front of you and say, based on conversations, research, here's how we can move forward and try and figure out a pathway going forward, but have some clarification prior.
Jared, this is Todd. Quick question. Are we unique in what we're experiencing with regards to the other codes, plumbing, mechanical, fire, electrical? Did they do what we do, and have they seen similar results to advancing their rules?
I think they let us take the beating, Todd.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think
No, I
mechanical and plumbing were waiting to see if the building code's passed, and then they were going to go through the process this year. The fire code, interesting, it has a different path, right? It's through the Department of Insurance, and it's not as robust as what we have to go through.
Yeah. And Jason, help me if I'm wrong on my observance, but aren't they like right above the energy code for contention?
The fire code?
Yeah, in the legislature. Or
I don't know, but they have an easier path to adoption than we do, that's for sure.
That was kind of another reason that I was saying it would be maybe I don't know if you want to call it an earmark or a path, whichever, that would help us maybe get the IBC with the fire, and we can sort of, I don't know, maybe we can use some of their leverage and maybe they can use some of our leverage. That's why I was thinking the same way.
I don't know if the board has the authorization to do that. I think the boards are pretty limited in their authorizing language on what they can work on. So.
Before we move forward, Chad's had his hand up probably for 10 minutes, and I want to make sure we don't forget him. So Chad, do you want to go ahead? I'm sure your arm's getting tired.
Well, thank you. First of all, I agree with everything that's been said, and I was unable to attend the meeting. And so a few things. I mean, AIA Idaho did submit a letter of support for the code adoption, all of the code adoptions, right? We're supportive of all the efforts taking place. And one of the things that I guess that's a little frustrating, but maybe it might be something that we can take advantage of, is we do have a legislative reception next week, right? Unfortunately, this bill was heard and before that legislative session, but is there a way that as we move forward in that session, and unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town and unable to participate in that, and I believe Taryn will be there, but if we can at least start planting the seeds for next year, right? And I agree that if we can come together as many organizations as possible, including fire and so on, to say that all of these together are beneficial, is that a way to sell it? I think unity is has weight behind it. And so but I don't know the timing of this bill and the legislative session, which is co-sponsored with the builders. It seems like it's a weird timing too that's taking place in that regards. This bill happened and is dead before the legislative session starts to even start to discuss this with the legislators.
Part of that issue might be, Chad, I'm just talking off the cuff because AIC had their kind of like reception with legislators in January, and Idaho had their thing in January. It might be an issue of AIA might need to just get in the game earlier, and that is not me trying to be critical. I just
No.
think I think it might be a thing where it's just a little too late because if you're coming out at the end of February, there's a couple of key things I think that are important to keep in mind. I don't know if you know about, but the first is that these aren't the rules aren't in the same process, but if you want to RS something, introduce something, the deadline for that was last Monday. And then there's a couple of like emergency options, but it's kind of hard to work through. So the majority of the bills we'll hear this session have already been printed and they're already working through. And the rules they typically try to get done earlier. So for future legislative receptions, if AIA could do it earlier, and I know it's hard because there's so many organizations, there's so many different times you have to keep in mind, but having it earlier, I think presents a better path to get the reception and attention of the legislators.
No, so we'll plant some seeds next week, at least for the next session.
Oh, and I forgot to say that, but that sounds fantastic, by the way. I'm sorry, my mind is slowly crumbling. It's Thursday. So my apologies for that, Chad. But yeah, I think that that's great. I don't know if you have, I could send it over to you, Chad, but the list of all commerce members and on the Senate side and in the House Business Committee members. And I, like Jason was saying, I would have a big red circle around each of those people's pictures to keep in mind, like, hey, if they're there, let's have a conversation.
That would be great. If you had that, then we could distribute it to the people, our members that are going to participate. So at least they are aware of the people that were involved so that if they have the opportunity, they can try to chime in on that.
Taryn, I don't think I have your email address as far as off just something I could grab real quick. So if you could send that to me and I will send that to you and Chad, and then I can also include Rose on that so that you all have it.
Please. And Lance, if I could follow up with what Chad was saying as well. So we are actively trying to be more participatory in legislative discussions and code adoptions and just in the professions in general. And I've reached out to Idaho for the last 2 years and have offered presentations to the state's building officials. So I don't know if it's the most effective thing. I usually get somewhere between, I don't know, 3 and 8 members that attend these presentations. They're pretty early in the morning. But it's done in an attempt to put our heads together to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we understand things in a similar fashion. And I think ultimately that we're a unified front when we are discussing these matters with the state legislature. So anyways, a compliment to what Chad was saying. We are trying to get into the game a little earlier. And if there are ideas on how we can do that, we'd love to hear them.
One other thing I'm just thinking about, and this is a note for everybody, but there are plenty of receptions that AIC will attend. INL does a reception every year. that they invite all other associations to. It's open to the public. But that presents a great opportunity. Zions Bank does a great forum. There was a nuclear forum, but even attending those events, if time is available, can be great because, yes, we ourselves might not be totally 100% interested in the topic at hand, but it's a great way to be in front of legislators that you might not be able to have that opportunity otherwise. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and appreciate everyone's comments. I know we're kind of going a little longer today. Is there anything that anyone else wanted to address on kind of the review subject? And I know we're kind of going to wait to see what the Building Code Board does in April 14th to kind of talk about this, but.
Yeah, the building code board will meet again in April. We can't do anything right now with temporary rules. We have to wait for legislation to end. And so need to circle back with Doppel and see, you know, if they're being directed in a specific way, or if they're, you know, if they're open to, you know, trying to do this a different way. So that's why I kind of pushed the meeting out till May. And I also think that there may be some elections and stuff coming up on the building code board itself. So we kind of want to let things, you know, like I said, we'll write down all of the concerns, make sure we have the appropriate answers for those, kind of get a feel for, you know, what the future plays out. We've also got, this is an election year, so there may be some changes coming in those committees. And if you want, you know, legislators are pretty open in election years to meeting with people. And so there's some avenues, you know, there. So I like to put it, you know, together, you know, as much as we can, and then we'll put that out in the May meeting and then kind of see if we can develop a game plan out of that. But yeah, my intention is not to back off. I mean, we got close. It's just, you know.
Well, remember the electrical code took 5 years before we got the latest one.
Yeah, and the building code or the energy code took 10. So we went from the 2009 to the 2018 over a 10-year period.
Yep.
But we never let up. Yeah, we pushed it until it finally happened.
Chad, were you going to say something?
No, just agreed on the 10 years for the building code.
I tried, Chad.
And I think that during that, one of the biggest things that finally pushed it over the top on that 10-year approval to go from 18 to 20 to from 9 to 2018 was until the state started to be told by the underwriters from the insurance companies that they were becoming uninsurable. It forced them to take that code adoption. I think that played a major role in that.
So that was a pretty unpleasant thing. We took the two groups and we put them in a big meeting room and we closed the door, and nobody gets out till we at least agree to disagree. And yeah, so, but we, you know, we got through all of that. So that's why I said I think persistence is the best plan.
Well, and thank both of you guys. You guys are doing a great job on keeping this thing moving forward. So I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, I just want to say before we adjourn, you know, thanks for everyone's time today and the conversation. Appreciate all the thoughts and feedback, and just, you know, thanks so much, Jerry, to you. I think especially all your work over the last, you know, nearly 2 years on this. And, you know, it's certainly a setback, but I think we're still here. We still want to move forward on this. So we'll kind of regroup. We're looking to have our next collaborative call on the 30th of April. So we'll send out kind of a whole meeting for that. That'll come after the next board meeting, and hopefully we'll have a couple options for us. But yeah, I really appreciate it, and Lance for facilitating these calls. And just want to reiterate, I think, the work that Justin Touchstone has done is he really went above and beyond and provided a great testimony and did his best. So appreciate that. And in addition to Ken as well, his comments during the meeting, his full support. I know it's not often that all of us groups come together and are in full support in front of the committee. So it was really great to see.
Thanks, Tess. Well, everyone, I think that's it for comments. Appreciate all of you being on. Chad, Taryn, I will follow up with you separately. Please feel free to send that invite to me for that meeting. I'd love to be there. I always want to make more and more connections with associations and their members. So I'll follow up on that note. I will send out an invite to our next meeting on April 30th. We'll plan on holding that at 1 p.m. And then please let me know if there's anything else that we can do to help. But until then, hoping that you guys can enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see each other again here soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.